Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Always Compete Seahawks podcast. I am Sam. That is Mike D. Fran, and today we are here to talk some wide receiver threes. A very underrated position on the offense, and a position that the Seahawks currently lack. And a guy who the Seahawks were interested in, Marquise Goodwin, just went to the Bears. So the Bears finally get somebody that the Seahawks have been associated with.
Nice.
And also besides Jermaine Ifedi, but I'm sitting here and I saw the Jeremy Fowler report. The Seahawks think Freddie Swain could be a good player, but I mean, at 56, there's a lot of quality wide receiver threes who could fall to us. So what we're going to do in this episode, guys, we're going to outline 3 players on the current roster and 3 players in the draft who could fall to 56 or even 129. And we're going to break down those players, see how they fit, and we're just going to talk about it. So I believe we should start first with on the actual roster. As we mentioned, not a whole lot of items here, but there's one guy who really stands out. It's Freddie Swain, second-year guy out of Florida. Last year, kind of surprised in some moments. He had his moments. Like he had a really nice catch against the Rams late game again in the wild card round. He had a touchdown against the Jets.
Against the Patriots in week 2.
Against the Patriots, and I think he had another moment that I'm forgetting. Oh, yeah, he had that almost catch in the Washington game. That's the other thing that almost broke Seahawks Twitter. But, I mean, I like Freddie Swain, but my overall question is, I like him, but do you like him enough to be like, hey, this is your position, go ahead and take it?
I don't like him enough to where I'd feel confident of him being the wide receiver 3 the whole year. Because, you know, God forbid DK or Tyler Lockett goes down or whatever, we have to have Freddie in the 1 or the 2 spot. I really don't want that to happen. Even at 3, you know, we're going to throw the ball. I'm not a huge Freddie Swain guy. I think he's great off the – he's like a bench player in the NBA. You know, he's great to get those other guys some rest, but I don't necessarily think he's the guy at wide receiver 3. But on the roster right now, that's our best option at wide receiver 3. So if we don't make any moves, then he is probably going to be the guy at wide receiver 3, I would guess.
Yeah, you know, obviously a lot of potential there. And you made a really good point. It's almost like a bench player in basketball. You know, like I'm going to make a basketball reference here. Like imagine if the 2015 Warriors, you know, Sean Livingston is a great player off the bench. But as soon as Steph Curry gets hurt and he's the starting point guard, you have some issues. You have some issues, you know? So I feel like you need a guy who can reliably say, you know what, go ahead. DK got hurt he's going to be out for 3 weeks, but you know what? It's no big deal because we have you.
Right.
And I mean, obviously there's one guy in free agency who could do that, but that's not what we're talking about today.
Wonder what his name is.
I wonder what his name is. I don't yeah, you know, we're just not gonna talk about it. But I mean, so Swain is obviously the number 1 choice. Number 2, we agreed on our number 2 choice, John Ursua. 7th round pick in 2019 out of Hawaii. Not super athletic, not super tall, but a decent route runner and pretty solid hands. I think he had like 18 touchdowns his senior year at Hawaii, which is kind of surprising. But I mean, Ursua's not a bad player, but
no, he's nothing special. Again, these are back-to-back 7th round picks. I mean, not every 7th round pick turns into, you know, a stud. But again, I think he's solid off the bench. I'm going to say the same thing pretty much with Freddie Swain. There's no indistinguishable quality about him. Like you said, he's not a speedster. His hands are good, not great. You know, he doesn't run amazing routes. They're pretty good. Like, he's just solid all around. There's no one attribute about him that is like off the charts. 7th round pick, a guy who can come off the bench and contribute, but I don't see being a legit wide receiver 3 in my opinion.
Yeah. And you kind of talk about that one distinguishable factor. You can say like, oh, Freddie Swain's a pretty good route runner, which he is. He's a pretty solid route runner for a wide receiver. He creates decent space, but like Ursua, he's pretty unathletic. He's not going to do a whole lot for you at wide receiver 3. And I believe we disagreed at our 3rd option. You had Penny Hart.
I did.
Who did play last year.
Yes.
You want to maybe explain that a little bit?
I just think, again, I don't think that he'll be the wide receiver 3, but I think if we're going by the 3 most likely, I think he's the 3rd most likely to be the wide receiver 3, just of the guys on the roster, because this is the guy who took some quality snaps. You know, he's had time. He's thrown with Russ. I feel like they're having mutual liking of each other. And this is honestly nothing more than just lacking depth and just picking the next guy off the depth chart. I do believe that right now he is probably the 5th wide receiver, which, you know, according to my list makes chronological sense. So I think, again, Penny Hart, nothing special, can contribute. Don't feel comfortable about him being my wide receiver 3 for the whole year.
Yeah, you know, it kind of keeps looking back to like the point where like these guys can do something, but they're not gonna make you comfortable to say, "Oh, Tyler Lockett, he sprained his knee. He's out for 6 weeks." Penny Hart, you're wide receiver 2 now. Like, no, you don't want to say that. You do not want that. So, but for my 3rd option, I had a different choice. 2020 undrafted free agent Aaron Fuller, out of Washington. This guy is kind of slow. He's 4.59 speed, not great. If you can point out one really good thing about him, his hands are very, very quality. You can look up a one-handed catch of him where he absolutely just went out and last year made his name heard in a Seahawks mock game where he mossed somebody in the end zone. Don't know who, they probably didn't make the team, but he mossed somebody in the end zone.
It's just a fan. It's just a fan. They just brought a fan on.
He mossed a guy in the end zone for 40-yard touchdown. It was his only catch of the mock game, but maybe with preseason, this guy would have had a better chance to make the roster. There's likely going to be preseason this year.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a big thing with the 3 guys we're talking, or the 4 guys we've collectively talked about. Preseason is going to be huge. If any one of these guys absolutely balls out, Aaron Fuller mosses actual NFL players, if John Ursua is open every play, if Penny Hart, you know, has a deep bomb or something like that, like these guys have a legit chance to be the wide receiver 3. I don't think the gap between any one of these guys is significant. Like Aaron Fuller, I'm sure right now is probably the lowest on the depth chart.
Yeah,
but he didn't play. He didn't have a preseason last year, which sucks for rookies. So he could very easily jump Freddie Swain and John Ursua. So preseason for these guys that we're mentioning right now, absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I think we can both collectively agree that Swain is likely the guy who we'd be most comfortable with and is the most likely to be that wide receiver 3. Mm-hmm. You know, we have to bank on him developing from year 1 to year 2, and that's kind of a big thing. So we're going to see how that works out. But now I think we can segue firmly into our draft choices. These are 3 guys. I mainly pick guys who hover around pick 56. I didn't really go super far into the pick 120s and the 250 or whatever we have.
Right.
I kind of stayed around this area. And for my first choice, I picked Rondale Moore out of Purdue. Let's talk about it. What do you look for? Like, what are a few key attributes that you look for in a wide receiver 3? You probably look for a little bit of route running to create space in the middle of the field. And then you look for number 2, in my opinion, you look for, and this is not in any chronological order, you look for speed, obviously, speed. Rondale Moore has a lot of speed, like a lot of speed. And then you look for dynamicism. People can be dynamic and kind of make defenses a little wary, make them make them always on their toes. Rondale Moore fits 2 of those comfortably, and I'm pretty sure he can run routes pretty decently. So, I mean, Rondale Moore as a deep threat in the middle would be very solid if he does fall to 56. Not necessarily a guarantee. I think on my list, he's probably the only player who's not a guarantee to fall to 56. So I don't know if you had Rondale Moore, but that was my first choice.
I did. And before I kind of get into my Rondale Moore, I want to say great use of the word dynamicism. That is a upper echelon vocab word that you used. And don't ask me to spell it, but I really liked the word choice there. I also had Rondale Moore. You mentioned it, you know, wide receiver 3. We've got 2 studs on the outside. In the middle, we need a guy who is fast and can make plays. Quite honestly, I don't stress route running too much with these guys because I don't think that we're going to be having him run a lot of very complicated routes. Again, you know, a lot of the need for a wide receiver 3, and we didn't have it last year. David Moore, I love you, but you're slow, was to stretch the defense. And worst case scenario, if we get Rondale Moore in our hands, he will stretch the hell out of the defense and open up those passing lanes for Russell Wilson. It's speed, 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 more speed. He gets the ball in his hands. He is just a little jackrabbit. He can juke, cut, spin, do whatever. I mean, if you need any proof of this, go back and watch the Ohio State game from a couple years ago. Made those people look like they were on the JV high school team. And that was a team that was competing for a national championship. So playmaker, and he's fast. Absolutely. My number one realistic option to fall to 56. Obviously, I'd love Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, but that's not realistic. At 56, I think the best realistic option is Rondale Moore.
Yeah. That's I think we can kind of agree on that. Kadarius Toney is the guy who we collectively really like.
Yeah.
But there's been murmurs of him going top 20 in this draft. So I don't think it's realistic to the point where, unless if he has like a Laramie Tunsil situation, I don't think it's likely.
Hey man, that's a great day to make that joke.
Oh yeah. Yeah, nice. That's great. That's a great one.
Check that off the list. Made a 420 joke in the podcast on 420. Nice.
All right, checked it off. Next up, I'm not even looking at players. I'm looking at a checklist right now of what we have to say.
Yeah. We just got a script over here. Things to
do. Second, I'm looking at Dwayne Eskridge out of Western Michigan, I think it is.
Ooh.
I like Eskridge a lot.
That's spicy.
I think he's a pretty solid football player. He's fast. He has deep threat ability. I mean, I looked at some of his recent games that he played. I mean, he didn't play great competition, but I'm on CBS Sports right now. Let me tell you his most recent stats. His most recent game against Ball State, he had 9 receptions for 124 yards, a long of 51, and 1 touchdown. But against Central Michigan, he had 4 catches for 212 yards and 3 touchdowns.
4? That's like 50 yards a catch.
Yeah, he averaged 53 yards a catch and an 85-yard touchdown. He caught on 75% of his catches, he had a touchdown. So, I mean, this dude is no doubt dynamic, no doubt fast. He no doubt has the talent. The question is, does he have the competition? Do you want him stepping in and immediately lining up across Darius Williams or Jalen Ramsey or Jason Verrett?
Please don't bring up Darius Williams. It's still
it stings a little bit.
Still fresh in the mind.
But Eskridge is a very talented guy. I think the competition probably allows him to fall to us, and he stands at a pretty clean. He stands in at, I believe, 5'9", which is pretty decent size for a wide receiver 3. Also at 190, so it seems like he fits the build. It seems like he really fits the build.
I think 2 things with him would be size, and then the lack of competition. Those are 2 things that are going to hurt him very much. But you know what? You can play. I'm not one to discriminate against height. If you have a problem with height, go talk to our quarterback. Pretty sure he would be living proof that doesn't really matter. But just there's been short guys that have done it at wide receiver 3. So I don't have necessarily a problem with his height necessarily. Lack of competition does kind of scare me. I mean, obviously those numbers are nice. Love to see. What was it? 4 catches, 212 yards. That's mad.
Yeah,
it's like when
it's ridiculous.
You just throw it up and just catch it, and then 50 yards.
Or it's like when you go on rookie for one game and you just play against the CPU and you put up like 150 points. That's what it's like. That's what it's like.
When your team just lost to that team and you're taking all your frustrations. Yeah, I get it. I don't disagree with you, but I put a different guy as my number 2 option. Now, this is a guy who I think has significant upside. And I don't think we have to pick him at 56. I think we can get him a little later in the draft. We'll be pushing it a little bit. But Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn, the only thing you need to know about him, he's fast. He is really, really fast. Is he a good route runner? No. Does he have great hands? No. But I think when you have that elite speed and you can get that in the late rounds, you have to give it a shot. Remember in 2016, there was a guy who went in the 5th round that nobody really cared about who was super fast. Yeah, his name's Tyreek Hill. He turned out pretty good. So I think that we should take a chance on Anthony Schwartz if he's there late in the draft. Significant upside. Again, like I mentioned with Rondale Moore, worst case scenario, this guy just stretches the field and makes life easier for Russ. He makes sure they always have a safety over the top. I like Anthony Schwartz a lot, and I think that if he's there, we should draft him. Not in the second round, in the later rounds.
Yeah, I definitely feel you there. I looked up his 40 time while you were talking, and I also looked up Dwayne Eskridge's 40 time. Schwartz ran a 4.26, which is like blazing fast. And then there was also, I looked up Eskridge. He ran a 4.38. So
very fast still.
Both guys are definitely fast. And I do feel you there. It does allow us some flexibility. We don't have to pick them immediately at immediately at 56. We could pick him at 129, or maybe because he's a guy who wasn't the guy. He wasn't the guy at his school. So, I don't really see him going that high. Maybe a team is just like, hey, he's fast. Let's just jump up and we'll pick him. And it's like one of those like whoa picks in like the mid-third round that teams have for some reason.
Yeah.
I like Schwartz a lot, and we had previously mocked him to us in a previous mock draft, and I wouldn't be against it at all, especially at 129. I think that would almost be a steal with his.
That would be a steal. It's like Tyreek Hill level of draft status, basically.
Yeah,
so I love that a lot.
So for this third one, I have a player who maybe isn't at the top of everybody's board. Maybe he's not even the best player out of the players who could be available at 56, because guys who could be available at 56, there could be Tylan Wallace, there could be Daz Newsome, there could be Sage Surratt, there could be Amon-Ra St. Brown, there could be Cornell Powell. I picked Cornell Powell's teammate, Amari Rodgers. I think Amari Rodgers has a lot of versatility. He lined up at running back at his pro day, and he lined up at receiver. He is, once again, we talk about versatility and dynamicism. You want a guy who can bring that to your wide receiver 3 to open up the defense. Amari Rodgers is going to fit that. Amari Rodgers is a quality football player who I just really see as a gadget, almost. A gadget guy who you can also rely to be your main wide receiver 3, and a guy who also ran a 4.4 at his pro day. I think that Rodgers, his versatility could really allow us to maybe be like, hey, we're getting a 3-in-1 package here between an outside guy, an inside guy, and a running back at 56. Maybe we take a shot on him. Maybe we take a swing on him, or it's a trade back situation where you can pick him at 70 or something like that, because he'll probably still be there. So obviously the competition question isn't here.
Against the best of the best.
Yeah, he played in the ACC, one of the best conferences. Once again, the question really here is his size. He's 5'9.5", weighed in at 211. That's the question. Do you want a guy that small lining up at your wide receiver 3 position?
Right.
So once again, we talked about how if you have Lockett or DK going down, like, what if DK gets hurt? Do you really want Tyler Lockett's 5'10" and Amari Rodgers 5'9.5" lining up on either side of the ball? They will get the life pressed out of them, and Russell Wilson will have nothing to do. That's just kind of how it goes with small guys. So you wonder, are you all the way comfortable? I think so. I think he's a quality enough football player to get separation even on the outside, and I love his versatility, man. I love it. And even honestly, he might be a lesser Rondale Moore. That's kind of how you look at it.
I totally agree with you. Before we started, I switched it to Amari Rodgers because I did a little bit of research on him, and I found a little nugget that is pretty telling of his character. So for the whole, time we've been talking about speed and physical attributes and size, but I just want to say that Amari Rodgers tore his ACL and came back in 166 days. Now the typical comeback for a torn ACL is just about a year. Rashad Penny didn't Rashad Penny towards ACL, came back about mid-season this year.
Yeah, I think it took him like exactly a year.
Yeah,
because he came back
and
week 15,
and that's normal. I'm not anything against that. That's pretty normal. ACLs typically take a year. Amari Rodgers took half a year, not even half a year.
That's
now,
crazy. I never even heard that.
The reason that he did that, and you could have talked to any coach on Clemson, Trevor Lawrence would attest to this. He is a worker. He's got a great work ethic. And another thing that is underrated about him, let's be honest, Trevor Lawrence is the number 1 overall pick. Who was Trevor Lawrence's favorite target in college? Amari Rodgers. So the fact that he came back from that torn ACL shows a lot of work ethic. The fact that he was the favorite target of the number 1 overall pick shows me that he's football smart, that he is friendly with quarterbacks, because quarterbacks and receivers often help each other out. Obviously, Trevor made him look good. I think he made Trevor look good too. I am falling in love with Amari Rodgers. I really have no idea where he'll go off the board. This draft is absolutely stacked with wide receivers. I would say that I love Amari Rodgers. He's fast. He's got good hands, can run good routes. In terms of a value pick, I think Amari Rodgers is the best wide receiver in this draft per value, where he'll go versus how he'll produce. In terms of that type of value, I think he's the best value pick in this draft. Absolutely in love with Amari Rodgers.
Yeah, that's a hot take. And also I put an honorable mention. I said Elijah Moore if he falls, because it's not likely that he's going to fall, and I wouldn't say it's likely that he's even going to fall. So I said that if he's there, he's my number 1, but he has to be an honorable mention because I just can't realistically see him falling all the way down that far when he's a first-round projected pick. So that's kind of how I view this wide receiver room. Obviously, you can see a pattern with our draft picks. Speed.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we did because we're Seahawks fans, and we want the 100-yard deep ball for the touchdown. That's what we need, and that's what we want. And if we get a guy like this, Rondale Moore, or, Dwayne Eskridge, Anthony Schwartz, especially Anthony Schwartz. Imagine Russ throwing to a 4.26 dude running a full streak down the field. Like, that's ridiculous. So I would be not surprised if the Seahawks went out and were like, hey, Amari Rodgers is our guy at 56. Or the Seahawks are weird. And they could be like, hey, we think Amon-Ra St. Brown is our guy at 56. Because the Seahawks are weird and Pete Carroll's a USC guy, you never know what to expect. And I just think that makes the likelihood of the Seahawks picking a receiver 3 for that matter, so much higher.
Right.
So I think that's going to kind of wrap it up for us here. Overall, we broke down the wide receiver 3 position, players who could potentially replace it on the roster. But overall, we're leaning towards players who could replace it through the draft. This is our second part of our 5-part series where we break down our biggest needs on the team. Next episode, I believe we will do center, a big need, and should be some fun talking about that. I know that we love our big boys on the Seahawks, and we need them.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
That's gonna wrap it up. Appreciate y'all for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.